You are about to watch the John Dash and Friends highlight reel. Our production team has carefully scoured through hours of video footage to bring you these special segments, each one chosen with the hope that it brightens your day and lifts your spirit. John and his family believe these moments do more than entertain. They preserve history. They capture memories, celebrate friendships, and remind us of the joy found in everyday life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a television program that is changing the world, one moment at a time. You're watching John Dash and Friends. If you enjoy these highlights, you can find the full video on Facebook at John Dash and Friends.
She was pregnant with you, and because I remember her coming in with her belly all sticking out, and when we started
Mom
that
always
church.
looked like she was pregnant with triplets, like somehow,
yeah.
always.
She
and
carried
she was
heavy.
a lot of belly. Me and Morgan didn't carry that way. Me and Morgan got pregnant. We were pregnant everywhere. Like our noses went to our cheeks, like everywhere pregnant. Mom was just a pot belly all the time.
You know, and your mom, she worked right up till her water broke. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, she worked and she just was like that, man. She was good at having children.
Well, that's one of the when you'd sent me some of your questions was like, what was one thing I felt like I was supported?
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there trying to think of something, and I was like, I can't think of one time because it wasn't like it was ever a big deal.
Right.
And like when people say, oh, you can't do that because you're a woman, don't let them tell you you can't do it because you're a woman. Ain't nobody ever told me I can't do nothing because I'm a woman. I was emboldened so much to probably a flaw of you can do it better because you're a woman. Like that's because that's how Mom raised us, was like, if you need to do it, go do it, get it done. There's nothing you can't do. It doesn't matter that who you are, that you're a woman. And you raised us the same way. We at the barn, you needed something done, go do it. Okay. It didn't matter if you were a woman. It was so I always, y'all put so much confidence maybe to a flaw that like I can do it, whatever it is. And I had the same thing at the house. Like we need drywall put up, and I was like, I bet I could put that drywall up. Give me a YouTube video. And that's just where I am. Like there's never a time I didn't feel supported. I was overly supported.
You know, and that's what
we
what
could
we
like
wanted to do.
slightly mention a dream, and y'all were like, "Let's do it." We're like, "Easy, we're not ready yet." Like,
your mom was forever making me slow down.
Yes.
Because if y'all wanted to do something, I said, okay, let's build the building and
Let's
get
go.
it started. And I'm always telling her, I said, does Kelsey want to do anything? Is there a business or something she wants to do? Let's do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And let's sit up and do it and make it work. One thing that I think about a lot is I think about you girls and Colson, when you went to find a husband or a wife, that one of the traits, and it could be subconsciously, but what you looked for.
Yeah.
I think about this, okay, now your mom is a good worker, and I've always been supportive in her work. Okay, but I think about you were not interested in a man that did not work. And it was strange to watch, because I would watch these old boys come in, smelling good, looking good, and I'd watch them come in, and I get to watching them. But if they weren't workers, if they didn't have that trait, that you didn't, because there was one.
It's even more than workers, it's excuses. I can't stand when there's always an excuse or like a reason or not doing something. Come on, man up. Like
I knew there was one old boy you're looking at, and you were sparking, and he got someone to clock in for him while at work one time, and I remember this. He got somebody to clock in for him while he wasn't at work. You have friends. I don't have a lot of friends, but I tell you what, as you get older, if you're not careful, your world gets smaller.
Yeah, it is. That's what happens.
And you have to work on expanding that.
Mm-hmm.
If not, it gets small, don't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I try to do that.
I've noticed you lately, because a lot of you friends, or you say they're your friends, they're really your acquaintances a lot of times.
Right.
But so they start dying off. I mean, it's just the fact. You just have to realize that. And here lately, man, I begin to notice a lot of them, a lot of my friends and people that I know, they begin to die off, and you got to try to get some refresh and get more people to coming in.
I think you got to make friends, though, Charlie. You got to really, and what happens too, you get older and you don't really do it. And I know neither one of us are ancient, all right? But I mean, the thing about it is if you're not careful, you'll isolate yourself in such a way that just like with family or with people close to you, and you won't make friends. I've tried over the last year. I made some. And like Joe White has been my friend for a while, but we got closer over the last year or so.
Yeah.
And Mike Compton, I didn't really know him that well.
Yeah.
But he became my friend. I think I bring in other friends that I'm meeting that I really like, and but I look for that and let that happen. And this guy I just interviewed, Logan. I mean, him, we're becoming friends, and then just different people that I meet. I'm trying to add these new people into my life, because if not, your life will become so small.
You get so isolated that you get it's kind of like a hermit. You really don't feel like. I mean, really, you just want to stay by yourself.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
No.
It's not good when you withdraw from everything and don't communicate with other people.
Right.
And, have other people in your life, because we got to show ourselves friendly.
Yeah.
And that's what the Word of God tells us to do. It says show yourself friendly.
Yeah.
And when we begin to do that, it begins to increase our world, and things begin to come in, and it begins to help us.
Let's stop with people.
Okay.
Okay? Where does your greatest heartache come? It comes from the response of people.
Right.
Okay? They don't love me, not good to me, they won't forgive me, they won't pick up their socks or whatever. Okay? So we have that battle. We let things that we can't control, when we admit we can't control, or what people think.
Right.
Okay? Well, you know what I mean? What do they think? You know what I mean? And what I found is, and I've got friends that have constant battles about what everybody else thinks about them. And I try to convince them that people are not thinking about them near as much as they think they are.
Right.
I said, they're really not thinking about you that much. You're all wrapped up in it. And then they'll change their mind. People change their mind. I mean, I do. You ever, for example, you ever see somebody and think, that's just a donkey? You know what I mean? That's what they are. There's just something about, and then I see somebody else and I think, wow, they're pretty sweet. I really like that person there. Well, what's the difference? I tell you what I found for me, okay? That they smile. I've met people that were nice people that had no sad expression, and some were born with it.
Right.
Born with that upside down frown. And they naturally put off, you look at them, people think they're not happy, they're just rude, or they're like this. But then I've met people that smile, and smiling going on, and they sometimes can be a donkey inside.
Right.
But what makes you think them is because they put off that thing about them and makes them happy. And I judge them according to that. I've had people that I thought, but people that really will carry that joy in them and will smile at other people, take time, seem like they can pave the way.
Well, it takes no money to be friendly.
Right.
Or to smile or be kind or, just a good person. Just, it takes no money to do that. But I know what you're talking about people's attitudes and, or somebody that's, they're always in that valley.
Right.
They can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Everything's doom and gloom. I can't stay there. That's not me.
No. It's like they find a place of, what I found is the reason why some people can stay in a place like that is they don't have to be responsible. Okay? If I can constantly be sad and constantly be upset, then I never have to grow up and be responsible and be accountable and do something. Right.
That is a non-starter for me. We're not doing that here. And I'm sure that once I leave the room, that creeps in. I know it does, but I like to set the tone that, this is not the place for that.
Yeah.
We have a goal, and talking about people that, that then things that don't matter is not going to get us to our goal.
I think when you keep the vision clear,
right.
You know what I mean? If we keep the vision clear about anything we're doing, if it's a marriage or if it's a business, whatever, we keep the vision clear and stay clear on stuff, then things work a whole lot different.
Right.
And it's easy to get off track.
Yes.
Okay, it really is. And when I know this, you have done, and we'll circle back to some of this, but when I think about things you've done as an entrepreneur, tell me about your daughter and this business and what you've done.
Sure.
Because I've been following this some. Okay.
Yes, I'm so proud of her. I have four children, and they're all awesome. You see me bragging on her a lot because she has gotten the entrepreneur bug. It's not that I don't, I'm not as equally as proud as the others. I think people who are like, does she only care about the one kid? That's not the case at all. I try to keep a lot of that private.
Right.
But when we bought the coffee shop, 2 years ago, I guess, and really just bought the equipment. My friend Nancy owns the building, and we didn't want to see the coffee shop close. When we started this Main Street, Tazewell Main Street initiative years ago, the coffee shop was really the anchor of that movement. There's always a small business that is the anchor of a revitalization movement in every single town. And in Tazewell, it really was the coffee shop. We had soon after the coffee shop opened, the restaurant started opening, and Between Friends, I think, was the first business to sort of relocate to Main Street. But when we got that coffee shop, it was like, wow, Tazewell has a coffee shop, And the Laneys did an incredible job at building that business. But they wanted to move on. And so they wanted to sell it, and I waited and waited on someone to buy it, and it just wasn't happening, and it wasn't really that much money because you're just buying the equipment, So we bought it and took it over, and it grew very fast, and at the time was doing grant work for a nonprofit. I was employed. That was I had a full-time job doing that, right? And I was so busy at the coffee shop, I had to quit.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we were hiring people. We hired, I think we're up to 7 employees at one time. And it was just people were excited about new things and just a little bit of marketing, right? And Kendall was probably 17 when we first acquired the coffee shop. And so she immediately started working and learning, and she's a quick learner. She's a great marketer. And she's been with me on many business ventures since she was little. When she was in the 2nd grade, she would make slime at home and take it to school and sell it. She started a cleaning business when she was in high school. She's cleaning a house right now. She is a hustler. Okay. And she just learned so fast. And so finally, the coffee shop became stable, and so I was able to put my focus back on my actual work and continue to grow that.
Okay.
And that I can't do that while being at the coffee shop, right? And so it just felt like the natural next step to say, hey, Kendall, this is yours now. And she's doing remarkable with it. She's bringing in a lot of new products. She's got a gal there who is a great baker, and they've got everything set up for her to do all the baked goods there in-house, and it's wonderful. And so she's also become very involved in promoting Main Street. She's sort of picked up that torch and is helping a lot with organizing events that bring people to Main Street, and just promoting Main Street as a destination.
And I thought, well, he's so sweet, but he don't know.
Right.
Fast forward just a couple years. A businessman that owned that. See, we always thought that the golf course owned that because there was a driving range.
Right.
The golf course did not own that. A man owned that, and the deal was they kept it mowed, and he let them use it as a driving range.
Okay.
He approached me 3 times to buy a piece of property off of him. I thought he meant, and he said, I'm pounding him a branch. So I thought he meant back up there in the holler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I didn't want that. And finally, the 3rd time, he said, Barry, why won't you talk to me about this land I'm trying to sell you? I said, well, Randy, I want to be on the 4-lane. I want to be on the 4-lane. He said, Barry, how much further on the 4-lane can you get than the driving range?
Yeah.
I said, you're talking about the driving range? He said, yes, I'm talking about the driving range.
Right.
And so then the light bulb went off, and was like, okay. And so that was God that answered that prophecy and the prayers that we had prayed.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful. I mean, I admire the vision, admire what you're doing. I think it's great.
Thank you.
I really do. I mean, you got to know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Okay. I've shared this before that Noah didn't have an ark ministry. He only built one ark.
Right.
Okay. He didn't go from town to town showing people how to build arks.
Right.
And if we do what we're supposed to do.
Yes, sir.
And I think one of the keys I've seen in ministry, that there's a lot of people, a lot of ministers out there that have a lot of troubles because they're sort of doing everything they can do, everything they want to do, instead of just what God has told them to do.
Yes. I see that. We call it burnout. That was a big word back in the 90s, early 2000s, spiritual burnout. And I heard a man say one time, and I never forgot this, and I've used it in countless sermons. If Samuel would have poured his oil on the other 7 sons, he would have been empty by the time he got to David.
Right.
And what I've found out is so many times I've seen ministers waste their oil on things God didn't assign them to.
Exactly.
Man assigned them to.
Yeah.
And then by the time the right person came, they were so exhausted or so depleted,
Exactly.
they had nothing to pour into that person or that ministry or that assignment that God had for them. And I've tried to, as I've got older, I've tried to ask myself, okay, God, do you want me to take this preaching appointment? Do you want me to take this revival? Because Carlene and I both felt that after the kids were out of school, God would open up even more of our evangelism. And he has. We've been preaching down south and going to Alabama, Georgia, places like that. But at the same time, there's just because somebody calls you and asks you to preach, it doesn't mean that that's your assignment to preach. So I've tried to stay sensitive to that. On what is my assignment, what God has called me to do, and who He's called me to.
Yeah, I've never heard it termed like that, but you're absolutely right. I think we can. Let me go back to casting your pearls before the swine. I found that when the young rich ruler came to Jesus and asked him, "What must I do?" and Jesus began to tell him, "Sell all you have, give it to the poor, come follow me." And he went down the line, and then the young rich ruler just turned and walked off.
Right.
But Jesus didn't chase him, and he never mentioned him again.
Right.
And there's some people there's some things in life that will suck the life out of you. I see Jesus went on about business.
Yes.
And I think in ministry and life, and that if we do what we're supposed to do,
yes,
and I had a lot of people as I started doing what I'm doing now in media, I've got about 50 ministers that count on me to get their message out.
Right.
And my mobile app's in 60 countries now. And they get mail from New York for California and don't know why they get it.
Right.
But and I don't stop and explain it. I think let's talk about this. I think one of the challenges is the people that you're around. I try to spend time, make sure I purposely spend time in my life with successful people in areas.
Right.
Now, to me, I have a big thing that I share. Success has so little to do with money, as far as I'm concerned. It has all to do with choice.
Right.
Okay. So when I say I want to be around successful people, I want to be people that can choose to be free.
Right.
Okay. And I think that there's things that bring freedom where you can choose to be free, but being around some people can greatly cause things to work worse. I mean, if you get around somebody that wants to slap somebody all the time and wants to beat this person up and wants to do this, I mean, it ain't long till you want to fight with them.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and the Bible warns about that too, about who you surround yourself with. I heard a saying one time, says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you need to choose wisely.
Right.
I heard that, and that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Just being intentional, really. That's,
Once they get that check, and my daughter had an issue. She wrote a check at a yard sale. People we knew, the guy that worked for us, his wife, and turned around and wrote a check for these boots or something she bought. She ended up looking. This girl took the routing number, paid her life insurance, paid her phone bill, paid her power bill, once she got that routing number. Mm-hmm. And started paying all this stuff. It was about the bank reimbursed her, and then the girl got in trouble for some other stuff, and she ended up getting that money back again about 3 years later. Worked around on it. But I mean,
and banks are getting very good about trying to help people not give away their money, helping people when something does happen. So I tell people, let your bank know if you think there's anything suspicious. Now some of the scammers will say, when you go withdraw that money, you can't tell the teller what's going on because that bank's under investigation and they're trying to take your money, so you can't tell them what's going on. But if you tell the bank and let them know what you suspicion, they will help you because they don't want to see their customers get scammed. So I try to let us know, let the bank know if you think in any way someone's trying to scam you. But still, yet we're seeing it week after week, people losing thousands of dollars in scams. Yes.
I know of people that have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, borrowed money on everything. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's see why this begins to happen. Let's take a glance a little deeper. I think the seed is greed. Okay, if it's me, you, or grandma. If we think we're going to get something for nothing, okay, it's usually when we set ourselves up. And I believe those scammers feed on that. Okay, if they think you're a little greedy, they start feeding on that. But I think if we can really the people that don't, and greed is a monster. Okay, I know that. Okay, now my Lord, we all got a little bit of greed. I reckon that's why we work and get a payday.
Right.
We can call it whatever we want, but I mean, it keeps the world in turn. I always say greed and pride keeps everybody from being dressed too ugly and money in their pocket. But But if they find that, they feed on that. And they start saying, all right, let me do it. And then they just ease you in, baby. They just ease you in and start pulling you little by little.
And we have some people who get so far in, they're afraid to stop, and they won't report it. And we have family members that talk to us, but they've already given $30,000 because they've been promised this million.
Right.
And if they report it to the police, then they've lost that $30,000 when they know the million's coming. So they won't report it to us because they don't want to stop, because these people are still promising all this money's coming. And so we have a problem with some people even letting us know and letting us work a case because they're still believing those people that big $1 million is coming.
See, I guess the message we want to get to people out there, the message we want them to have is, no matter where you're at in the middle of this, if you're hesitant, it's all right to let the police know.
Absolutely.
Out of the truck and have them get the loader and come and hook to me and pull me up a hill. He got out and got about 10 feet in front of me, and the truck just took off backwards like a sled. 3,000 gallons of diesel. It just took off sliding, just like I was one of them bobsled people in the Olympics. And then it just swung around the front end and straightened up, straight down the hill. I'm just flying. It's sliding. So I just reached up and knocked it in neutral and let it go. And I was riding it, rode down the bottom of that hill. He just stepped out of it, and there it went. Then I turned back around again and got me a run ago, and I made it up there the next time. But, I mean, there's stuff that we went through that was just, it was crazy, the things that we lived through, that God took care of us. You had to have a plan. My Lord.
Well, yeah.
I just kind of help those boards, those nonprofit boards, or those small towns figure out where they want to go and how to get there.
Right. Okay. All right. And I know that's a big thing. You've summed up a generation right there. Okay, that's a lot to do. But so if you're looking, if there's a town out there, and I know you're not advertising looking for business. I don't feel like you are. You might be, but you seem extremely busy anyway. Okay, but I mean, there are towns that need help. Okay, that don't know where to start. Now, first thing is, it takes money to have you. Okay, you can't just say, hey, man, how about zipping over here and giving us some ideas, because I think your knowledge is your currency.
Right.
Okay, it has to be. And a lot of times people forget that when they go to somebody and say, can you give me some advice on such and such? When, if that's your job, that's like if you asked a doctor, can you tell me about this rash I have? Well, I mean, yeah, he says if you come into the office and cover your deductible. So, I mean, there are towns out there, and if they're looking for help, or maybe looking for, and I know they're all over the place doing that are looking for help, that need. And it seems like a unique job what you do, because it seems like first thing you have to have somebody that will do what you do, that you can trust.
Right. Okay,
that's not coming in, milking out the situation and going off with it. So you look back on that person's track record and say, what has Amanda done? Right. So and that's real. If she's just tried her best, that's really good, but they don't want you to work for them if you're just going to try your best.
Right.
They want you to get the job done.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's important. And there's towns out there that part of that, and I was thinking about this thing. When you think about what inspired you and motivated you to start doing what you're doing, I mean, because I'm confident again that you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're all these different things that you could do, avenues of revenue. Okay, but what inspired you to go in this direction?
Really out of necessity. Here in Tazewell, we, several years ago, a group of us looked around and decided we needed to take action. And so Irma Mitchell, who, there's another very impactful woman in our community that's an unsung hero. Irma and my good friend Nancy Brooks got together and they formed a nonprofit called Tazewell Today. And the sole purpose of Tazewell Today was to focus on revitalizing our Main Street district. Okay. Back then, and I'll quote our former town manager Todd Day, in 2015 you couldn't buy a cup of coffee or a bottle of water on Tazewell's Main Street. So we formed this initiative to focus on that. And so we started with a plan. We fundraised $10,000 to pay for a company out of Blacksburg to come in and give us a plan, to give us that roadmap, right?
Right.
That was it was a huge community win. Everybody pulled together and raised this money.
Right.
So we got the plan, we started working the plan. One of the things was they suggested that we start doing cruise-ins. And that's when our pal Jackie Atkins enters the picture. Jackie was so instrumental in that. He brought those guys here. That you've been to our cruise-ins, they were very well attended. You were talking 200-300 cars on average. Well, all those people got to eat somewhere, right? And they're going to shop, they're going to want to do things. Right. And so that inspired entrepreneurship on a local level. So then we started seeing restaurants pop up. And at the same time that this initiative was happening, the Back of the Dragon was taking shape and becoming a destination. And those two initiatives really dovetailed and made Tazewell what it would later become. And so along the way, the town and Tazewell today created a position for a executive director of that organization, and then they hired me to do that work. At the time, we had no money. We had very little money from the town itself to carry this out, and so by necessity, I got really good at raising money and writing grants and building relationships, not just within the community, but with funders who also wanted to see Tazewell grow. And I realized, oh, holy cow, there are resources out there for us. We got to figure out how to capitalize on those, right?
Once you do that, you realize that's just so much wasted time.
You can spend more time with your family and spend that time with them and do things with them. And I know that one of the decisions that you made is to homeschool.
Yep.
Okay. And, what weighed on your mind, or what benefits, or what do you see in homeschooling Carter?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's, like I talked about, I didn't want a normal childhood. I didn't want him in school for, 8 hours a day sitting there. Once you do that, you realize that's just so much wasted time. It's not necessary to be there that long. It's a daycare is what it is a lot of the time. And I didn't want that. And he had gone to public school for 1 year, and like my skin just crawled when I did it. And I have an only child, so I get so much time with him, and I didn't want to give up that time with somebody else. I didn't want to give control to anybody else. I've got this one kid, I got this one chance. I want to be involved in it, and I love it. I mean, I learn with him. I never knew that. So I'm his teacher, I'm his mother, but I'm just as much almost sometimes I'm his classmate. It's just so much. If you can do it, don't let fear stop you from doing it. Do it. But if you can do it, do it.
They talk about, I don't want to homeschool my kid because I want him to the social environment. Well, there's so much social environment I would not want him to be in.
And a lot of the times, would you let your kid be friends with somebody if you didn't like them, or you didn't like the way they acted, or you knew it was a bad kid, or they cussed every other second? Right. Would you let your kid? No, you wouldn't let them be friends with them. But what do you do when they're in school and they're in the seat next to them and they're exposed to that day after day?
To homeschool your kids and private school you and homeschool you because we wanted to be able to control that environment best we could.
Some people look at it.
It's our hope that you enjoyed John Dash and Friends today. Your host, John Dash, believes these television programs serve as preserving history, capturing meaningful conversations and life lessons for generations to come. Each week, he sits down with friends from all walks of life as they share their wisdom, their stories, and their life experiences. If you enjoyed today's program, you can find us on all social media platforms. Just search John Dash and Friends. We're on Facebook and TikTok as well. In closing, John and his family thank you for allowing us to introduce you to their friends. We look forward to seeing you next time on John Dash and Friends.